Presidential elections expose divided America. This year's presidential election represents a deep split between Republicans and Democrats, which helps shape the nation, regardless of who is elected. Presidential elections are an opportunity for the American people to express their desire to go to the next generation of leaders they trust to send their ballots on. This year's race showed the record numbers of both Republicans and Democrats to vote, but even though they did, they could not agree on what the president should do. Democrats and Republicans prioritize different issues, live in different communities and even vote by different means. Regardless of who is elected, that split shows that the next president will face a huge stalemate in Parliament, as well as skepticism about the integrity of the ballot, and the agitated electoral bloc is increasingly divided by race, education and geography. Even the counting of the votes risks separating Americans. 4 days after the vote ended, neither Trump nor Biden failed to win the 270 electoral votes needed to be elected. President Trump encouraged supporters to gather demonstrations at polling stations, which are still tallying votes by mail, the electoral method preferred by many Democrats, while pursuing a litigation strategy to delay the time to publish the results. Except for the Civil War, I don't think we went through any period of potentially dangerous divisions like this one, said historian Barbara Perry, director of the Miller Center for Historical Presidential Research. University of Virginia, says, even in the 2000 election, when the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Republican candidate George W. Bush, the Democratic candidate Al Gore quickly yielded and American leaders gave up. A common voice is found on Capitol Hill, the U.S. Congress building. To have these things, it takes a capable leader to lead, as well as need people willing to follow, said Perry. I don't see anyone willing to follow both sides. The split threatens both the next president's ability to deal with crises, as the number of new COVID-19 infections set a record this week, the economy is struggling to recover from a pandemic, and many America is urgently demanding settlement of racial injustice. Trump and Biden voters both expressed distinctly different views on those challenges, according to the AP's VoteCast survey. Biden's voters largely want the federal government to give priority to limiting the spread of COVID, despite economic losses. But the majority of Trump's voters want to focus on the economic recovery, to take the pandemic problem lightly. About half of Trump's voters also say economics and employment are the top issues the country needs to solve now, while only a tenth of Biden's voters consider it the most important issue. In racial and justice policy, Biden's voters largely considered racism a serious problem in American society, but only a fraction of Trump's voters, most of them white, shared the same opinion. Concentration. Biden tried to close this gap, often calling for national unity and towards the soul of America. Trump claims to be the defender of the voter. He threatened to withhold pandemic aid from Democratic governors-led states and disparaged cities run by Democrats. Many Democrats hope Trump will suffer an embarrassing defeat, seeing it as a clear denial of Trump and his political career. They want an irrefutable outcome that will allow Biden to pursue ambitious policies in health, education and economics. Trump may lose, but Republicans retaining their positions in the Senate and House shows that the «green wave» that Democrats expect to control both Parliament and the White House have not happened. There is no clear victory for one side or the other. This year's elections are full of confusion and confusion, said Martin Luther King III, the pro-Biden civil rights leader. The election also strengthened the competitive coalition of the two parties. Biden relies on urban and suburban voters, especially women, college-educated voters and of color. Trump surpassed the number of votes received in 2016 on the basis of a large number of new rural voters, most of which were white Republican voters. The results in counties with a high turnout of voters underscore the trend. Republican-leaning places become more red, and places that lean toward Democrats are even greener. Democratic support rose to 70% in counties that supported Hillary Clinton in 2016, while Republican support rate rose to 56% of counties Trump won that year, according to AP analysis. For all counties with more votes as of November 5 than in the last election. This trend has caused some Democrats to win seats in the House of Representatives in regions with unclear political views this time. In Iowa, Democratic Congressman Abby Finkenauer lost his re-election campaign in the eastern region of the state, as Trump increased voter support in rural areas like Buchanan County just west of Dubuque. Trump has won the support of this rural county, with 96% of white voters, with a 15% gap in 2016. This number is up to 21% this year. Geographical polarization has also been one of the concerns for those who find Washington's culture of cooperation is rapidly eroding. Commenting on this year's election, former New Hampshire Senator Judd Gregg, one of the leading voices of the Republicans in the days after the Supreme Court decided on the 2000 election, said that it is not clear whether leaders in present Parliament are inspired to work with the other party. There were senators like Ted Kennedy and Ted Stevens, who held a tough stance but were always there first to get the job done and run the government, so they weren't shy and willing to compromise," said Gregg. He is among Republicans who criticize Trump. "I'm not sure if that kind of leadership today is because of the harsh rhetoric that dominates both parties. But Biden, if elected president, already knows how the system works, so we can hope for it." Hope.